Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we are going to look at an interesting battle happened between Magnus Carlsen versus Thunman Lee from the Champions Chess Tour Julius Baer generation. It is the second round and both the players are going to play 4 games and the player who scores 2.5 points is going to win the game. So it's already like round number 4 where Magnus is already leading with 1 point. The time control is 10 minutes plus 2 second increment and we are definitely going to learn a lot from this game. Because this game is like, you can say Magnus class, I would say. So I don't want to waste any further time, so let's start. So Magnus is playing with the white pieces and he opens the game with 1 e4. We have e5, bishop to c4, knight to f6, and now we have the move d3, also known as the bishop's opening. c6, and now we have knight to f3, attacking the pawn on e5. We have d5, bishop to b3. If you try to capture on d5, I think it's already not the best way, because now black is already having a very nice center and you're already having not the center pawn. So we have bishop b3, keeping the tension in the center. a5, the threat is to play a4 and trap the bishop. So we have a4, bishop b4, c3, bishop d6. So both the players are already in their preparation. We have e into d5. So finally Magnus decided to take on d5. So if you don't take and if you try to do a short castle, maybe black can take on e4 with the knight and black would be a pawn up. So you can play knight d2 in order to defend the e4 pawn, but at the place of it, because it's simply blocking up the bishop on c1, so Magnus decides to take on d5 and he realized that the b5 square is now weak because black has already played the move a5. So he first played bishop g5, bishop e6, and now knight to a3. His idea is to simply put the knight to b5, like putting the pieces at the best squares. So knight a3, knight c6, knight b5, bishop b8, keeping the bishop pair. And now we have the move queen to e2. You can definitely do a short castle, but queen e2 is a very good move by Magnus, like keeping the maximum flexibility and also at the same time developing the queen and also putting pressure on the center pawns. We have short castle and now Magnus is having the option to do a short castle or even a long castle. Magnus likes to play sharp, so he simply went for a long castle. And after long castle, rook to e8. The question is why Magnus went for a long castle but not for the short castle. After long castle, he realized that, like before doing the long castle, he realized that black can't really attack on the queen side because of the knight on b5. Like the pawns can't really move from the a5 and the b7 square. So there is not going to be much of an attack on the queen side. So we have rook e8 and now we have rook h to e1. If we are playing this position, many of the players would like to throw an h4. Like we don't know the idea, but our idea is h5, h6. But after h6, bishop f6, queen f6, you're already going to realize that you are not really having the bishop pair and already a bad position. So that's why we have rook h to e1 getting all the pieces into the game. h6, bishop h4. Definitely black can't really play g5 because it only weakens up his own king. So we have d4 by Thunman Lee, finally striking in the center. We have queen to c2, bishop into b3, queen into b3. So at the place of taking on e6, he played queen c2 and now we have queen into b3, realizing like the queen on b3 is such a good piece. Putting pressure over here, putting pressure over here. Like the queen is generally on a good square, so like doing the perfect job compared to the e2 square, which like the queen was 2 moves ago. So now we have bishop a7, king b1. Like I personally did not understand the idea of this move, bishop a7. Maybe the idea could be to simply get the rook into the game, but just king b1, improving the position. Takes. And the question is, how are you going to recapture the pawn? You can try to pause the video and try to think. So you capture the pawn with the pawn. Like not with the queen, not with the knight. Because if you try to capture with the knight, you're going to realize like the b4 and the d4 square, both the squares are extremely weak and could be the home for the knight. So that's why Magnus decided to capture with the pawn, covering everything. There should be no weaknesses around his king. So bishop b6, and now we have knight to d2 by Magnus, a classy move, I would say. Like if bishop g3, we have 97. Like if you try to attack the pawn, black is simply having 97 with absolutely no problem. And now black is getting his own play with knight c5. Like these are the weaknesses. So instead, Magnus went with the move 92 with his own ideas like knight c4 controlling the game. In the game we had bishop to c5, which was already a mistake. Queen d3 would have been best, but after queen c2 takes, it looks like white is a pawn down, it should be good for black. But guys, after g5, knight c4, bishop c5, bishop g3, you're already going to realize how perfectly these two knights on b5 and c4 are placed compared to the knights on c6 and f6, which are doing absolutely nothing. The e5 is collapsing, a5 is also weak. Overall speaking up, white, despite being a pawn down, is still better in the game. So this was, I believe, like the calculated line that Magnus calculated. But after bishop c5, at the place of queen into d3, now we have bishop f6 and now queen f6. gf6 was the best, but definitely from a human perspective, it looks like the king is extremely weak. Why to go for it? So we have queen f6, knight c7, and now we have queen to g6. Many of the players would like to already instantly take on a8, but guys, now black is having this intermezzo with queen into pawn, which we definitely do not want to allow our opponent to do so with a check. So first, Magnus realized like the rooks are still hanging, so it's better to first prevent the threat. So we first played knight e4, and now we have the move bishop to e7 because the bishop was hanging. Bishop e7, and now we have rook e3. So again, many of the players would like to play knight into a8, rook into 8, which is still fine. This is still better for white. But Magnus went with rook first. He realized that still the rooks can't move. So we have king h8, takes, and now we have rook g3. Queen to h5. You can't really capture the pawn because the rook is hanging up. So we have rook f3 now, rook f8, and now we have knight to g3. The best would have been to play h3. I personally believe Magnus was a bit scared with the move f5, but now actually he can really allow his opponent to play f5 because now he's having a very strong move, which is to play g4. If you takes, and now we have, like, we can play simply king c2, which protects everything, and now just queen is ready to go into the black's camp and going to get a win. But I believe Magnus might have missed, like, he saw h3, but he missed the move g4, I personally believe. He played knight g3, which gave black the opportunity to play queen c6, knight f5. It looks like white simply stopped the idea of f5, but now after bishop g5, though the best move would have been queen g2, queen to d5, protecting the rook, and now we have bishop to g5, putting the bishop on f4, and black is kind of doing good. But though after queen e4, queen to g4, we have d4, and white is still better. But this would have been the best practical try by black. But instead, we have bishop g5 immediately. But after g4, bishop f4, like the idea is right, but the moment he played it is not the right time. h3 now, rook g8. So Magnus is simply improving his position. King c2. Like, what the hell is this move? He's having the time to play g4, h3, king c2. Like Magnus' playing style is basically not to create any weaknesses, keep improving his position, and eventually there would be a time when your opponent is going to get under pressure, not finding any plans. That would be the moment Magnus is going to strike. Knight e7, queen to d5, f6, rook b1, getting all his pieces into the game, queen to e8, attacking the a4 pawn, and now we have queen f5, knight c6, queen c7, queen to g8. Here there was already a very strong move which can actually equalize the position. You can pause the video and try to think. A very beautiful combination of moves. Okay, so the move is absolutely very insane, I would say, which is knight to d4 check. First of all, you can't really capture with the pawn because of rook c8, and you lose the queen. So you have to capture with the knight, and now we simply have rook c8 first, takes, and now takes. So now this is hanging, and also queen e2 is coming in, and also queen a4 is coming in. So there are multiple threats. Rook into bishop is the best move. Queen e2 check, rook takes, queen to d2, there could be some deadly discoveries now. You can't give some checks like this because I can give a check like this and can capture the queen. So we have king to b5, takes here, once again creating the indirect pin, and now capturing the rook, taking the queen, and this is just a draw. That's it. It's a bit hard for black, I would say, because the pawn and the king are extremely near to each other, and maybe the pawn has the potential to become the queen, but still, it's a draw. But queen g8 was played because Magnus was threatening mate in 1. Rook to b3, rook c8, take, knight to a5. So Magnus saw this, like he's getting forked, but he saw a bit advanced. Knight c7 takes, rook c7. And it looks like the knight is trapped, and definitely the knight is trapped. But after takes, you will realize white is actually having 3 pawns and a rook for a piece. So that's completely winning. We have d4, king b4 here. So now Magnus is completely winning now. Magnus is pushing his pawns, like taking everything. And now here, he played bishop into c7, made a queen, he pushed the pawn, and now he played king e6, which was the big blunder. I would say the final blunder of the game. Knight e4 would have been the best. You have to push, and I can play the move knight to g5, which is insane, as both the players were having extremely low time on the clock, as it's a 10 minutes plus 2 second increment game. Knight g5, and basically the point here is, first of all, knight e6 is coming in. So you have to play, like, if king d5, we have knight f7 covering the square, and after king over here, like, black can just play rook d8, knight over here, and it's a check, and you have to make the reputation, because if the king goes back, I can capture the queen. And if after king b7, if rook into a7, and this is not working, this is like just a blunder. And here, if white plays rook c8, I can take, and I'm having this knight check. That's insane, and I can capture the queen. And it's a draw. So that's the whole point. But in the game, we had king e6, which was a blunder, because it simply allowed him to push the pawn, and now it's winning. Like, again, king c3 was the drawish move, but king d3 is again a blunder, and now we have knight d6. At the place of knight d6, rook d8 was a draw, because after rook b7, like, if I try to play rook c8, I can already take over, like, I can take over here, it's a check, and I can capture the pawn, and it's winning for black. So you have to play rook b7, but after knight d7, king over here, takes, and it's at least a draw. But instead, we have knight d6, and now we have this, like, a brilliant move played by Magnus. Rook to c8. You can't capture the rook because white can make a queen this way, and if you check over here, it's again a queen. So rook into a7 was a fourth move, made the queen, and now we have this final position. But like, many of the players were agreed to a draw, because already checkmating a rook with a bare queen is very hard, and you must know the end game. Rook d7 check was played, and black is also having a pawn and rook. We have check, king over here, check over here, taking the pawn, check over here, check, and now queen b5. A very interesting way to play the endgame. Like, many of the players would like to get the king near the rook, but guys, it's like black can simply start giving you checks, which is not the best way. And black needs 50 moves, and if you don't make any progress, it's a draw. So that's why we have queen b5 first, preventing any threats that black is having, and black needs to have the rook and king connected, or else black might lose the rook. So we have this, check, king b8. If the rook comes in between, it's a mate in 1. So we have king b8, and now king over here, and now we have queen c5 check. You can also give a check like this, but we have queen c5 check, king b8. If king a6, you must not play king c6, because after rook check, it's a draw. It's a stalemate. So you have to play queen a3 check, and queen b4 check. Okay, sorry, my bad. You can play queen a4 like this, queen a4. Again, covering everything, and now black is absolutely having nothing. Have to go back, and I can already give a check, and it's winning. You can already realize. And if rook b8, just a check, and you can already realize the way black wins the rook, right? So king b8 was played, and again queen f5, covering everything. We have rook a7, which is kind of the fourth move. Check, 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 and now we have king to c6, and there are no checks. That's exactly the way you should play whenever you are having a queen against a rook. First, prevent any idea black is having, then get the king near the king. Rook goes back, and now it's winning now. And now we have queen b3 check, a very good move. Queen b2 check is fine, but queen b3 check. The point here is, like, if you move the rook over here, the king move to a8, white is having this check and can win the rook. So that's why after queen b3, after queen b3 check on the move number 93, Thunman Lee decided to resign the game and Magnus won, because after over here there was check, and eventually on the next move black was going to lose the rook and Magnus can win the game. So yeah, so a very interesting game played by Magnus Carlsen. So I basically gave you an idea how Magnus really plays the game of chess. He focuses to keep the maximum flexibility. He first of all, he gets the pieces to the best squares, the best squares where the pieces deserve to be. Identify the weaknesses of his opponent, or try to create the weakness of his opponent. Keep on improving his position without creating any much weaknesses, and eventually have a good position. And from that moment onwards, he simply grind out the end game, and yeah, that's how he won. That's how he actually wins. So that's why Magnus Carlsen, it's nearly impossible to beat Magnus Carlsen because of his playing style. So a very interesting game played by Magnus Carlsen to beat Thunman Lee. If you guys learned anything new from this video, make sure to like the video, share this video with everyone, and make sure to subscribe to our channel if you are new to our channel, because I'm going to come with these more interesting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching OneShot Chess.